Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Snowpiercer. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, at the beginning, we're literally picking up where last week's episode left off with Nikki's murder. Obviously, Eric got away with it. He's covered in blood, but sadly, he wasn't able to kind of escape back into first because he got stuck in... because I think he got stuck in third or whatever because the plot, because of the fight that broke out last episode, there have been little barricades put up, so he's kind of stuck in third. And at the same time, obviously Layton's kind of pissed because it's dude, Nikki's dead. I literally gave you the description and she's dead. It's why didn't you do anything with it? And for Melanie, it's she was going to wait till the morning or whatever. And it's well, now it's just things ended up the way they did. But Bess is the one that's kind of the fact of the matter is there would have been no way for the killer to, if the killer's from first, there's no way for them to have gotten back up to first because of barricades and stuff like that. So they're still back here. So it's all right, so they can still track the killer down. So obviously they're splitting up trying to find the killer. And so Bess has to go with Oz, which even she's shouldn't he be suspended for the fact that he took all those, he's been selling drugs and stuff like that? It's Roach is the fact is we're short on staff right now. Either you deal with it now, you deal with it later. Either way, that's your partner. Get to it. So there's that. It's so interesting too because Bess had that whole thing earlier in the episode with Jinju about the whole situation of Bess hasn't come out about a relationship with Jinju just because it's a situation of, well, you're from second and I'm from third. And it's a whole complicated thing of dating up class or even dating down class, and it's just Jinju's why does it really even matter? But I think for her, it's she already kind of gets enough flack in third. And I think this would just add more fuel to the fire of just kind of because I'm sure it'll turn into a situation of oh, you're sleeping your way to the top type of situation. It might, I think she's probably worried about that kind of falling back on her. But she's just come, give me enough time and I'll kind of figure, this whole situation out. But obviously her, Jinju and Melanie Melanie ended up calling Jinju about, Nikki. So now it turns into a thing of all right, well, we got to hunt the killer and the killer's somebody in first. So obviously a lot of people are gathered and it's just kind of the fact is a lot of people in particular Ruth is kind of do we have to really kind of go about things this way? But it's we have a serial killer on board and none of you are you don't want me to have access to first and stuff like that. It's we're dealing with a serial killer. Are you that? But Melody's no, don't worry, you'll get access to first because you'll be going with me. And so that led to an interesting thing because as they're walking, there's all this art in front of them. And for him, it's oh, I guess art's only for, first. It's all these rich people and stuff like that. But Melanie kind of does an interesting thing. She's yes, they have all this power and privilege. I get it. You're angry. You have every right to be. Take that anger and turn it towards his investigation. They look down at you as this taily, then prove them right. Kind of be this so despicable in front of them, and the fact of the matter is almost play into because I guess it's to kind of make them a little more fearful so you're allowed to get more answers out of them and they'll be less hesitant to kind of talk back to you. Just play into their fears and their prejudice of who you are as a taily. And then Melanie's the fact is Mr. Wilfred wants justice. It doesn't matter what class the killer's from, and they just kind of move on. So he goes in there kind of eating food, making a damn mess, throwing food on the floor and everything. And it's just kind of a thing of him kind of demanding authority. It's yeah, the fact of the matter is, hell, Ruth doesn't look like everybody's here. And she's yeah, I got everyone here. He's yeah, so where are the guards? And it's she's I didn't think it was necessary to bring in the help. And so it's a lot of them, like I said, a lot of people at first being oh God, it's why should we listen? They're disrespectful towards, him because they're oh, the killer couldn't be one of us. We would never, do something like that. There's never been anyone charged with a crime or whatever. And then for Andre, it's oh yeah, because she was protecting you, but that's no longer the case. So yeah, this is what this is. And it's and then LJ is oh, Eric's not here. And I'm oh, so now it kind of points to Eric being a killer. What I thought was kind of an interesting thing. It's okay, I want to go check out your place, the Folgers place. And they're no, we want Mr. Wilfred to talk to us right now. And so This was interesting. Melanie calls up, the front, and her engineer's like, "Yeah, what's up?" And so I liked it. It was quite the gamble she took, and she's pretending like she's talking to Mr. Wilford. And it's like, yeah, the Folgers won't comply, and him on the other line like ad-libbing shit, like, "Oh yeah, he's like, oh, if that was me, I'd be really pissed off." He's like, huff, 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 huff. I love that because it's like, even though he's speaking for a fictional Mr. Wilford, you can tell that's exactly how Melanie's probably feeling on the inside. It's like, motherfucker. Mr. Wilford decides things. You want to act like you have the authority. So she's like, all right, she wants to talk to you right here. Lily wants to talk to you here. And about to point out the phone, and Lily got scared because the last thing she wants to do is talk to Mr. Wilford, especially if he's pissed or something. Like, it might reflect bad on her. So she's like, fine, he can check out our rooms, but only if you're with him. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wilford. It seems like everything got cleared up just that quickly. It's like, damn. I was like, but once again, and you see there's a look on Andre's face. I'm like, did he figure it out? Because it's like, but I was like, that is quite the gamble you played right there, Melanie. Because constantly, that's always been the thing about Andre. Is like, who the hell is Melanie? Like, why is it that she specifically? For one, it's like, you're literally the only person that speaks for Mr. Wilford. And the only times you ever hear about him is on intercoms and stuff like that. It's just, you could tell like he was just kind of piecing things together because it just seemed. And I think like you see almost this smirk across her face, like when she put Lily in her place, is almost like this smirk. Like, all right, let's get to it. So it's like little things like I think like that kind of added up. But obviously he's going through all that stuff. We find out like Eric's got like a military background. Oh, there was also an interesting tidbit where it's like we found out, oh, he has a gun. And then Andre's like, no one on Snowpiercer is supposed to have a gun. But it's like our security was able to keep their guns, which Andre was like, we were told to disarm for your protection. So it's like, why the hell do you need guns when we ourselves don't even have guns? It's like, that doesn't make any, so. That's the complicated nature of this situation. So literally at the same time this is all going down, Josie is, joining sanitation because they got to make do with the chip that they got, like that can let them access doors. They're going to try and take advantage of this. They're trying to, because obviously it's a thing of like, they got to meet up with other contacts. They're meeting up with, what's her name, Astra, this episode. She's someone that they lost contact with like twice. They're like, we've talked to her how many times, so we don't know if she's still in this, but it's like they need an in-between so they can keep in contact with Andre. So she joins sanitation, and luckily they have like pajamas and stuff like that to make her fit into third. Like it's like, oh, she just walked out of her room in her pajamas or something. Like that was pretty slick. And obviously they've got like a 30-minute lunch break, so she's able to kind of dot out and talks to Astra and about the whole thing of like, she's like, I can't, if I get caught, she's like, I get it. You get sent back to the tail. It's not the easiest thing. You've literally tasted what it's like to be treated as like a normal human being. So to be able to give that up, I get it. But at the same time, it's like, but this is for the tail. And Astra's like, okay, I'll do what I can. I'll get in contact. She even gave Josie some of her food just so she could just get a taste of it. She's like, thank you. Luckily, she was able to make it back in time without anyone knowing she was going like literally down to the second. And okay, you're dressed and good. Oh, they walk in. It's like, oh yeah, break time's over. Okay, let's go. So at the same time, like I said, Andre's going through Eric's stuff. And I think it's interesting because like the moment he pulls out like the blade or whatever, and it's like, well, what is this? And LJ immediately knows what it is. She's like, oh yeah, Eric told me. It's like something related to bees, which apparently they used to have a thing about. They used to have a section they would keep bees and stuff like that. But like I forgot what Melanie says specifically. Things didn't work out, so it ended up like being kind of shelved. Which I think for Andre is just kind of a thing of like, so there was room for this and that, yet there's no room for the tailies. I think that's what it is. It's just more like there's more privilege and more advantages. You have all this stuff like, because apparently I guess Andre never knew about the bees and stuff like that. So it's like there's still so much to the train that's a mystery to him. Stuff that they're still using, other things that are still, I mean, it's understandable considering there's just like so much in between. There's the tail, there's a third class, there's second class, there's first class, and there's so much in between in each one, so. It's actually interesting, guys. She skipped over it because Audrey, from the club ended up talking to Andre about the whole thing of like, just because like, first they're going to like close rank. And so there might not be any justice, but she gave her backing to Andre. She was even basically telling Melanie to shut it. Cause it's just kind of like you let all this happen. This is kind of falls on you. Cause you're the one that like pushed for, Nikki, she didn't even get justice, so I think that's where that, comes from in that regard. It was also interesting because Andre was pushing the whole Melanie thing of like, oh yeah, does she have any secrets? And because obviously it's like, a lot of people spill their secrets there. She's like, no, I have my confidentiality, and obviously what goes down, obviously I don't say anything. And he's like, I appreciate it because obviously, between him and Zara, so I'm sure he appreciates it. Obviously, you keeping that low key, but at the same time, it's like the same thing applies because she can't say whether Melanie had or hadn't, because if she has said that Melanie did, that meant there was something there for you to grab at, because obviously he's trying to figure out what Melanie's big secret is. But throughout the entire investigation, I kept being like, LJ seems so because from the very beginning she seems like one of those kind of almost spoiled girls that's just kind of like, oh, I want to live close to danger, like, oh, just her, like, prior to now, and even in this moment it just resonates even more of just like, why is she acting like that? Like, just like, oh, the thrill, it's so exciting, like it's almost a game to her, it's just kind of like, what was your relationship with Eric? She's like, I probably shouldn't say. It's like, what? This is a murder. But like for her, at least even your parents, even though they have the reluctancy, are a little more forthcoming. Because even when the time came, it's like, oh, what was did Melanie and Eric have a did LJ and Eric have a relationship? Lily was like, of course not. He was the help and stuff like that. Where the dad is like, yes, they did. They did have their relationship. At the same time, there's a whole thing with Eric. I guess he had his little, place in third. And he's stashed there with his gun. There's like dead flies everywhere. Bess and Oz end up tracking him down. He's got his gun. He goes on a run. He runs into, what's the dude's name? Anton and Jinju. And he ends up taking her hostage, which obviously like sets Bess off of like shit. Like, damn it. And so they're like rushing after. They had, turned into a whole chase thing. At the same time, like, and going back to what I was saying, like, LJ, like, her whole thing of, like, the way she's like, oh, apparently, like, have y'all, like, apparently y'all don't get to see the sun in, the tales. He's like, yeah, a lot of us haven't seen the sun in, like, 7 years. So she opens up the shades and stuff like that, lets him see. It's almost just it's almost this weird thing of almost like her. It's hard to say whether that was out of compassion or was that just supposed to be like I'll have access to this, and it's like, all right, since you're here, like almost like she's rewarding an animal, like, oh, good boy, oh, here's some light for you. That's what it felt like. Even Andre meeting his first cat that's called, what was it, Snowpiercer. No, yeah, it was like, yeah, Snowpiercer. But nevertheless, the music she was listening to, because even Andre was like, huh, that's interesting. Nikki had the same taste in music. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And so Andre starts piecing it together. Like, the fact is that Eric messed up when he took the penises, because it's like, that screams a crime of passion by a woman typically. So it's like, so Andre starts piecing it together that Eric did all like the killings and stuff like that, but he did more so the torture and stuff like that. The whole chopping off the penis thing, that was kind of her contribution. It's just kind of like and Andre basically figures it out. It's like, he was basically helping you. Eric wasn't in this alone. He was just kind of, almost like a dog on a leash. It's just kind of like, obeying his master, essentially. So he was just kind of taking orders. And she just kind of seems like, all right, so you figured it out. But Eric, she's like, I don't have to worry about it because Eric's not going to tell anyone, because basically she's like, she kind of figured it was going to end the way it does with Eric. She's like, oh, he's going to end up dying and it's going to go to the grave with him. So it's like, the thing about you is like, well, what do you want? Do you want access to this and that? She's like, I can get you whatever you want. He's like, how about guns? He's like, oh, you're really serious about this. And he's like, all I have to do is not tell anything. And she's like, yeah. So I was like, okay. Obviously, they end up catching up with Eric. He's on the run, but then like, he even said something when he was with Jinju and Anton. He was like, it's going exactly how she said it would. I'm like, huh. I guess like LJ probably predicted this and told him like what was going to happen. I'm curious. What was his plan in the long run? I guess it's just kind of like I guess it's a thing of like, he's so infatuated, he's so in love with her type of thing of like, it's like, oh, she manipulated him to the point where he was like, no, even if I'm dead, like I'm going to die keeping her secret. I'm not going to give up, because I love her so much, maybe that type of thing, or the case may be. I was actually scared for Jinju. I was like, is he going to shoot her? But he just shoots the thing in front of him, and they all charge towards him, and they start slashing into him. I was like, he was putting up a fight, but he got overwhelmed, and they just like, he's dead, and they're still like axing and hacking at his body. It's like, Jesus, that's brutal. And so obviously it's like, oh, he's dead. And LJ said, what? Eric's dead? And she's bawling out. I was like, no. I was like, holy shit. And then she looks over her mom's shoulder and is looking at Andre, almost smiling. I was like, dude, she's a sociopath. Holy shit. That is just like flipping that switch like that. And Andre just kind of gives Melanie a nod. Melanie's kind of like, okay. She comes back with guards and they're like, what the hell are you doing? It's like, and then Andre's like, oh, wasn't Eric working alone? Your daughter's a murderer. And it's like, what? No, she isn't. And then she picks up a knife because she got pissed at Andre for saying anything. And she tries to attack Andre, but obviously he defends himself. And Lily's like, get off my daughter. Because for her family, all they cared about was the reputation that they would have. Because it's like, oh, we can't let people know that Eric came from us. Like, it's like the fact is, I don't want people creating something, whispers about like, oh my God, they were protecting a killer and stuff like that. So obviously they didn't want that. This is going to look worse upon you when it's like, oh, your daughter, because Ruth is kind of promising to keep the whole Eric thing, like the connection stuff, like try to keep it a little more hush hush. But now how are you going to handle this? Because this is a bigger disappointment because it's like, wait, my daughter's a part of this? But you'll probably still be like, no, my daughter didn't. Even she attacked Andre because he was babbling off, accusing her of something shit. But it's like, yeah. I would assume she's going into drawers. I assume. Maybe not. I don't know. Eric's dead. But it's like, yeah, the second... I guess because also she's from first, so she has a little more leeway. Because it's like, Because the only reason why, like, some of the tailies, from episode 1 were put on ice was because of Andre. If it wasn't that, they would have been executed. So it's like, I guess it also, in this case, shows you the privilege, too, of like, well, she was from first. I was like, well, so was he. But he wasn't someone of necessarily importance. He was just, the help. He was, a guard and everything. So, but now that was taken care of, they, got some form of justice, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. And Melanie's like, oh, come on, Andre, let's celebrate. She's kind of like, oh, put all your, all that anger aside and stuff like that, and let's have a drink. And he even waited for her to take a sip, and he was like, all right. He's like, ooh, sake. She's like, yeah. And it's just kind of like a thing of like, she said something I thought was so fascinating. Because he was like, she was like, oh, job well done and stuff like that. He was like, I'm trying to I just want to go back to the towns. And she's like, I can't let you do that, Andre. It was like, you've seen too much. I'm like, is it because you know that he's going to try and use what he's seen to kind of fight back? But she's like, plus you figured it out. And he looks at, I was like, wait, he did? I was like, holy shit. Because like I said, I had this feeling like the way he was looking, like at the very least he was closing in on it. But she's like, the fact of the matter is there's nothing stronger than a myth. And she's like, yeah, hopefully you never have to be in a situation where you kind of have to carry like such a heavy burden. But then obviously like Andre's kind of like, wait, and he gets up and it's like she dosed his drink and she's like, I'm so sorry. Like Andre did the right thing and everything. But it's like, once again, I can't have people telling my secrets. That's why obviously it sucked. But I guess that's the benefit. I mean, I guess that's actually the main reason why the argument could be why she left Nikki, didn't report the killer immediately because she was hoping the killer would come and kill Nikki. And it's like two birds with one stone. Nikki knew something she wasn't supposed to know, so she needed to be taken care of. Well, not unless I was like, I was about to think something else. Not unless I got misinterpreted this whole thing completely wrong. Regardless, the fact is Andre's been, taken out of commission. And even in the back, it's like, oh, we got a message, Astra. And it's like, oh, look. And it's like, Leighton's missing it. It's like, shit. Because the thing is, there are going to be some people to ask questions. Like, it's not going to be clear cut for Melanie. People are going to ask questions, especially Bess, because I'm like, where's Leighton? It's like, oh yeah, she could probably lie and be like, oh yeah, send him back to the tail and everything. Could be that argument, even though Mr. Wilford made him, trained detective and stuff like that. But I don't know, because I think Roach has kind of gotten attached. But if anyone, like Bess is the one that's kind of gotten the most attached to working with Leighton. So I wonder, would she kind of be a little more like, no, something's up. Because even Jinju last episode was like, oh yeah, like don't cross Melanie, and Bess was like, fine, I'll go around her. But I'm curious to see what ends up happening with that, because obviously Melanie's even telling Henry, she was like, Mr. Wilford doesn't want him injured or damaged. Do you hear? So that's the thing of like, because I guess for her it's like she needs him removed from the equation because he knows her secret, but at the same time it's like, I don't want him hurt because it's not like he's a bad person, it's just he knows too much. So it's like, but the thing is, what are you going to do, keep him on ice forever until like, like how long do you plan on doing that? Like, once again, it's not like he did anything bad, it's simply because he knows her deep dark secret. So I don't know. It seems like almost like Melanie's still flying by the seat of her pants, and just kind of, once again, that was the main reason behind the Nikki situation. What was Jinju saying? Like in the first time we met her, she was like, "So what are we gonna do? Hopefully, no one asks the wrong questions, but almost like, what do we do if that comes up?" And it's like, well, we see what we do. We shove them into a drawer and just kind of like try to magic this away. It's not going to go away that easily, because it's like, well, the tailies can't really do too much, they can't bring up too many questions like, oh, where's Andre, because like I said, no one else is really going to care too much. No one at first is going to care too much, second or third. Once again, only person I can make an argument that would probably bring up something is Roche and Bess. At best, they're the only two like in the higher class who would probably, I mean, I say higher class, but obviously they're the third, but still like someone in that rank. I think Audrey and Zara would be other people who'd probably bring it up too, especially that the killer's been caught and everything. But the thing is, LJ being who she is, there's a good chance she might kind of run her mouth off about something. I mean, granted, it's not like she knows at this point in time, but I'm curious to see where things kind of go on that front too. It's just like, it's so interesting. Your reward for solving the case, you get to go in the drawer. So we'll see how long that ends up lasting and how Melanie handles this situation going forward. I'm very curious to see where all of this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's what I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.